recording that you missed my little intro, but one of the things I was going to say, and I just want to bring up the chat window, there we go, is anything you guys share tonight in the chat window, we'll also have that as a transcription. So when I send out the presentation and share the slides with anyone, anything you guys want to share in there in the chat window would be awesome, because then I can just put them in as like ideas and notes and stuff throughout my presentation. So chat away. Also, I'm really going to open this up in a bunch of different points for discussion. But if anyone has any questions, and I'm talking too much and I'm not pausing for them, just throw them in the chat window as well. And Miranda will help me out there and sort of keep an eye on the window, and hopefully we'll see questions as they come along. So these are I'm going to say these are the topics really that I want to go over with you guys tonight. I do feel like I'm still sort of formulating all this concept or this experience that I've been through, but I have a lot of opinions. And so that's the other thing I'm going to share with you guys about an experience report that being someone who's done a lot of like research and formal writing, this is a little different because you say a lot of times like, well, I think, and in my experience. So again, can't stress enough. That's why I'm looking for you all. And I've already gotten a lot of help from Miranda and others that, other people's views of the similar or different experiences. So here's the different items that I want to cover tonight and what I've experienced with leadership roles and how you have to take leaders through their own personal transformation. Kind of then going to talk a little bit about what I think is more traditional manager versus leader, but I'll put a little bit of a spin on it when we think about Agile transformations or any of the transformation work that we do with DevOps and Lean and all of the different frameworks that we work with. Then probably the most important, I think, for all of us here as practitioners is, what can we be doing to help these leaders that are going through this transition? What can we do for them? There's a lot of traditional things that we can help with around training and books and things like that. But also I wanted to share some ideas that I have where we can kind of push them in a new direction. And then tools and tips, as I already sort of mentioned, we'll collect some ideas that we all have to share or to have going forward. So this, again, my statement, I say that these Agile leaders are just crucial to a successful transformation. Part of my story goes back to when I absolutely, in about a moment's notice, I think it was a great thing, but I think we were given about 2 weeks notice that we were going to change our entire organizational structure. I worked in a data center for a large corporation. And in a couple of weeks, I was no longer going to be a senior engineering manager. I was now going to be an Agile delivery lead. And so what I learned pretty quickly and where I came up with this stuck in the middle is that when you're an Agile leader, you're in this in-between zone. So you have all these awesome teams that have reformed. And in my case, I went from having one team of engineers to having many, many teams that had specific customer and product responsibility. So that was a little bit overwhelming in itself, because now and of course it was Agile. None of those teams had managers anymore. So it was just me and all these teams that I was now responsible for. And I found that when the teams are going through these changes, they look to their leaders even more. They're as individuals, as new teams, they're in flux. They're kind of confused. They don't really know what's going on. And then on the flip side, their stakeholders, they're kind of still stuck in this management thing, but their managers, their executives, they need them even more. Same kind of thing. A lot of the executives I've worked with along the way, they didn't really understand their own role. They probably didn't have the time that we had for training and understanding. So they were a little confused. So we had to sort of bring them along, or today we still bring them along. And finally, I think the other thing that's important to say here is that I guess in my experience, maybe half the people that I've worked with as Agile leaders have not really been naturals at it. They were put into this position. We see this a lot with our clients because they didn't want to make an organizational cut. They didn't want to lose someone with a lot of knowledge. So maybe there's some of these people are going into this a little bit unwilling. They know right off the bat, like, I don't really like change. I want everything to stay the same. And so this is this new term I've coined, is that we no longer want to have middle managers, but rather middle leaders. So that's what I'm going to sort of talk about tonight, is what I think middle leaders, like what they look like, what they have to be, and again, how can we help them? So one of the challenges I find to anyone who's getting into a leadership position is that it's so much more complicated than just being a manager. I think I have this later on as a definition on one of my slides, but to me, a manager is sort of that, like what I've got listed here as supervisor. It's more just that, are people coming to work and performing the way they're supposed to? What is their assignment? When are they going on vacation? Do I put them up for a promotion? Are they going to take another role in the company? Are we at risk of losing them? But that's about it. And it can be pretty complex because managers can be managers of managers and that hierarchy and such. But what gets added, in my opinion, to a leader is this notion of mentor and coach. And I can actually go back even to before I was a delivery lead, and the first Patrick Lencioni book I ever read was all about becoming a coach, and how and there was still a manager then, like as a manager, I could take on a coaching perspective. And having always played sports in high school and college, and I'm still active today. I don't do team sports, but did a lot with my kids and all. I could really relate to this whole notion of, oh, okay, I get it. Like, I'm not going to be out there on the field with them. I'm not going to be, kicking the ball or making the goal, but I'm going to be the one that's going to help them set their outcomes. What's their plan? Where's their strategy? We're going to practice a lot, and I have some expertise. I've played before, so I can get in there and help them. So these are the three characteristics. Probably isn't strong enough word. Probably goes a little bit farther than that. The three aspects of a leader. And so let me pause there and just ask: is there anything anybody else can think of at these types of, like I said, aspects or characteristics that you all feel like this Agile leader needs to possess?
Is this only supposed to be an Agile leader, or is this what you're talking about as far as supervisor is more the traditional things?
Yeah, I would say anything anyone defines as what most of us are going for today in new ways of working. So we call it a lot of times transformation, but really just when an organization decides to shift to a less hierarchical and more of a team-based collaborative environment.
I think that the manager needs to be more aware of culture, how, where they are as far as the culture, where they need to be as far as the culture, and what they're going to be doing to model that change and bring that change forward. So I don't know if change agent is the right term, but they need to understand that there's a big change, that the culture is changing, and that they are part of that culture change.
Yeah, it's not being done to them. They are going to help shepherd it.
Exactly.
Yeah, because I've definitely experienced that a lot and it's one of the it's one of the scenarios we're going to use in the breakout is when you have someone, it's sort of like, I don't want to change. Why would I lead people in changing? So yeah, definitely.
I always think of it as a collaboration and facilitation, and I'm not sure that that really fits under any of the categories that you have there.
You said collaboration and what else?
Facilitation.
Facilitation, yes.
Facilitation of a consensus.
Yes, that's a great one. Because I think a lot of times we think of I know in my practice, I think of facilitation as just like leading specific events or activities as a consultant. But I think you're right. As a leader, you know, facilitating the change is a great example. How are they going to make it happen? Well, I hate to say that.
And building a consensus maybe, but facilitating, you're facilitating collaboration and building a consensus, I guess would be what I might say.
I think that's great.
And I think that doesn't really fit. It's not a supervisor, but it's also not necessarily a mentor or a coach. I mean,
Right.
it's another role that you take on in leading and being a servant leader, though.
Yes. Yes, I agree. Thank you. All right. So the next thing I wanted to talk about is how this is really personal. So this is personal for this manager that we're pushing ahead in their, you know, their development, their career, hopefully. And as they change into this middle leader, as I'm calling it, I believe they're going to go through a personal transformation. And so some of the things that I think are really important to that person, and you could extend all of these things to the teams that they're working with and stakeholders and executives and such. But I like to stress when I'm working with these leaders that you are going to have to adopt and adapt to these new things, and you're going to have to sort of own them. And sometimes I tend to go very slowly and very lightly with this, because quite often these leaders have been told exactly what to do and exactly how to do things. And sometimes we do make the mistake in Agile transformations where we still, you know, I've used the term framework here, and we have a lot of Agile and lean frameworks. We can be pretty prescriptive. But I think what's really important for these leaders is that they actually develop their own framework. And I don't mean develop and the other things on these pages, the page too. And I don't mean develop as in like, I'm going to go copyright this and write a book and make this mine, but that they actually, when they're adopting, they actually go beyond just the training and the books and the articles and all the advice that they're going to get, which is all helpful and wonderful, but they actually start living it and they start actually believing in it. Now, it's very hard if anyone's ever studied or worked on changing someone's beliefs, even just changing their attitude or their habits can be really difficult. So this isn't something you can really like come out of the gate and say, okay, today, this is what we're going to change and you're going to look at this differently. But I do think it's something that as they start to go down their path in their journey, they'll start to understand that we're not just introducing this framework to them because we want them to just simply follow it in lockstep, but we want them to make it their own and to understand how they can contribute to it, again, for their teams, for their organizations. So really trying to work with them to understand how they're going to live within that new way of working. Metrics and reporting is also something I stress a lot, and I'll mention this a few more times, but I don't think we need to go into too much detail tonight because it's usually so specific for the situation. But again, it's something that they have to understand is really going to change. And again, I think the reason the change is so much, and the reason I use personal so often here, is that they're not going to make these metrics personal as in about them, but they're going to have to come up with those metrics that work best for their outcomes, for what their teams are trying to accomplish, and how they can best report that information. And I don't know if anyone's ever experienced this. I'm going through it right now with a new client, is that often the reporting aspect of what the former manager's job was very cumbersome and painful, and probably somebody had given them years ago some template, some meeting they had to go to, some sort of status report. So I will also mention this can usually be a great opportunity to sort of break down some old practices that even the managers don't even like, and really give them some opportunities to be creative and find new ways to report. One of the best ways I've ever seen this done, and sadly it's back in now what we call the old days, when we were all in our project rooms and in our spaces together in physical offices, was there was this group of new leaders that got really creative with things they put up on the wall, and they started making posters and all these kinds of things. And it was very attractive to their sponsors and their executives. And the next thing you knew, there was always people coming through to see like what was the new thing that was on the wall. And they weren't just like colorful and fun, they were very meaningful and useful. And some of the best conversations then started happening, where those sponsors and executives were just coming up and talking to people, often not even talking to the leaders themselves, but going directly to their team members. So again, personal journey to find out how can you become a better communicator and more creative communicator, and really get the message across, what is your team accomplishing and how can you show their progress. And then the last one is probably the most obvious, but I think it's really important to share with these new leaders that their relationships and who they're going to interact with is now probably, in these new ways of working, in these transformations, is probably now like the sky's the limit. And again, this is one of the things that my new leaders that I've coached, have always struggled with is, well, I don't talk to that team, or I don't work with that group, or I've never been over to that other building. And so just trying to kind of open up their minds to, hey, you got to go figure out who you need, what information they have that you don't have, how can you collaborate better together, how can your teams work together. And again, in the manager mindset, it's sort of like, no, this is my area, this is my silo, and this is where I need to stay. So really trying to get to open up their minds about who they're going to be working with, who they're going to be partnering with, even at their own leadership level, and how they're going to create those new relationships. And I'm going to guess when we get to the breakout and we ask for your guys' ideas with a few of these scenarios, that you all, anyone who's got the more of a change management background than I have, really understand that relationship building and how important it is. So that's an area that I feel like, as an Agile coach who focuses more on technology and not enough on the people aspect of it, is relationship building is probably another area that these new leaders need a lot of help with. So this is a little bit more of a traditional slide, maybe even is a little bit out of order, but when I tell my story, that's sort of how I wrote this presentation. This is the point where I came to realize some pretty simple truths. And so I think we've said a lot of these, maybe not. We have to be realistic about what the personality even, and so again, it's pretty personal, of that successful manager looks like versus what we believe and what we know and what we're going for in a successful leader. And so I won't read all of these things on the two sides of the screen, but this has been my experience, and there's been, of course, a lot of research done on this. And I'll share real quickly, sort of not the whole story, but one of the things that really came out when I was writing my experience report was the sort of how did we fail when I did this, and what did I learn from it? And I ended up writing a lot about competing and hoarding, which it was not something I ever really associated until I went back and wrote this report with my experience. But I think, again, and I don't even think it was a bad scenario that we were coming out of when we changed into manage everything through scaled Agile. I think it was really more, it was just our natural, and there's probably been a lot of anthropological things written about this, that it's just our natural thing to compete and hoard our best resources so we can do our best. And sure, we're making a contribution to the bigger picture, but we're really looking out more for first for us and our team and what we're trying to accomplish, and then sort of everybody else comes next. So hopefully the items on the right-hand side of the screen are common now to most of our new teams and teams that have gone through change management and such. So let me pause here again and just say, is there any other, and again, if anyone wants to just chat things as opposed to speaking out, that's absolutely fine as well. But does anyone have any other attributes or experiences that they want to share? And the other piece to this, I'll tell, that might ring a bell for some people, is some of the, I started to try to come up with some personas, but I didn't get through it all. But some of the terms I have heard in the manager types, and I actually was warned about this once in one of my transformations, was be careful, that's a mama bear. She's not going to let you near her cubs, or be careful of that person. They like to speak softly and carry a big stick, so you never know when they're gonna get there. So I'm not going to share those in my personal report, but I found that that could be a big problem. Hey, Adam, do you have your hand up?
I do. I don't want you to think that I'm not interested or not participating, because I will. But I'm kind of interested to see the thread where you're going, because you and I haven't talked about this concept before, and I actually want to give you some lead here and see where this is headed before I start asking a bunch of questions.
Oh, cool. Awesome.
There's one other thing I don't see that I think I found was important, is that you don't have all the answers as a leader. That, you need to allow other people to speak up and not be critical. And I'm not sure exactly how to say it. I don't like when people say fail fast, but it to me, it goes back to collaboration, but I don't think that completely covers it. And I don't really see it under any of the things that you have up there.
A great one. Thank you.
It's a little bit like leaders are like art. Like, I know it when I see it, or like maybe it's obscenity. I know it when I see it. Because I feel like good leaders can be good leaders in any spot, in any topic, right? And that's what I think, Sheila, you're kind of getting at, is this: I know how to lead even if I don't know the thing that I'm helping them do.
Sometimes I'm more effective as a leader if I don't know, because then I have to ask for their help and have to listen to what they say. I can't just say, oh, I know, so I can tell you what to do. It's like, okay, I know I don't know.
Yeah, and a great exercise I've seen around this, and I think most of us as facilitators try to do this, but specifically in this area, is that when you're asking for opinions on you're facilitating a group, like what went well, what went poorly, what do you think the problems are, what should we do next, what's the best design, whose solution are we going to go with, is to absolutely make sure that you don't let the leader in the room speak first, or even maybe speak at all. Like, let them, invite them to be there when the teams are working through these things, but that teams have such a natural reaction to follow their leader, Usually it's the path of least resistance. They get their work done, they figure out what they want. And so I think that can also be another challenge for some leaders in this case, which is I have to hold back because I'm no longer expected to have all the answers. And I know that was hugely problematic for me, because when I took on the new Agile role that I had, I was the, even though I wasn't the engineer or a engineer on my team, I was the one with the most experience. I absolutely had that. I've seen it all. I've done it all. We're not going to repeat any of our old mistakes. And so it was really interesting giving up that mantra, because making mistakes was perfectly fine. We were going to find new ways to make new mistakes. And if we did it right, we weren't going to blow up any data centers or crash any systems or anything like that. So yeah, very challenging. All right. So this next slide, I'm going to warn you, is a lot of words. I don't even think I see them all on my screen. So again, this is where I was struggling a bit and I'm trying hard to capture some of this information that I put together for my experience report without actually without trying to turn too much of it into a presentation, because I think some of these things are just ideas and practices and things that we can try out. So this kind of became my laundry list. And I actually think I probably have already covered, or we have covered most of these things. But the one thing I do, or maybe a couple things I do want to mention, is even though if we're getting away from a project management organization and the old days of Microsoft Project and some of those cumbersome tools, I have yet to find a new leader who is completely proficient and understands whatever lifecycle management tool that they're working with. So I always try to be aware of that and don't just assume that they're going to get in there and be able to manage the tool set that they've been given the way they have in the past. And maybe they've been using the same thing for a very long time. And the one other thing I did want to mention on this, and this is an idea that I actually kind of go on a lot about in my experience report, but I think it's very specific to the Agile transformation work that I do, because I work at an enterprise level where I tend to be working with many teams and many leaders. So I didn't want to focus on this too much, but I did want to mention that one of the things that was, I guess, is an example of how you can, when you're helping these new leaders, and as these new leaders get into their positions, you can just try new things and you can just make things up. And one of the things that I tried a couple of transformations ago, and it really works, so I've been duplicating it, is to actually get the leaders, right? So you're going to have multiple leaders in an enterprise transformation, get them to actually form their own team and take on Agile, whatever the framework is, Scrum or Kanban or SAFe practices. And one of the things that was really interesting, again, for me writing this report, was I realized it was a mistake that we didn't make on my very first transformation. We actually rebuilt some silos, which is never good. And when the first time I saw this actually work, they actually took it all the way up to the executive level. And if you've ever seen a group of executives of a Fortune 200 company try to Scrum, it's also pure entertainment. I really recommend it because they are so awkward and so uncomfortable at it. But at this middle leader level, it turned out it was really helpful for them to really appreciate their fellow leaders and all the things that they were bringing to the organization. And oh, guess what? As team members of their own team, they all had certain skills and certain things that they could share and learn from each other. And so they ended up being more successful as individuals because they too had formed this new team. So to me, it gives sort of a team of teams, even a new meaning to it. I don't think, is there any, let me put it out this way, because I'm guessing you guys are reading while I've been talking. Is there any items on this slide that sort of don't make sense to you guys, or that you don't understand how they would relate, or you want me to explain them in any more detail?
I mean, I feel like you could do a whole seminar
Yeah.
on the getting middle leaders to explain their fears and concerns to you. Usually that involves a long time and possibly fermented beverages.
Yes. I actually had a room we used for one-on-ones that had a couch, like a real couch, not just like cool furniture. And I was like, okay, if one
Like
of
a
the
chair and a couch, so like a therapy session,
yes,
or
it looked like a therapy couch. And it wasn't like I didn't pick the room. Someone did the scheduling and picked it. And I'll never forget that because I was like, oh my gosh, if someone actually lies down, like, you know, I'm their therapist on this couch, I know I'm really in trouble. All right.
bullet. Sorry, just to clarify, it looked like the second line got cut off for this. Encourage fluid.
Oh, thank you. I think it's, yeah, I think what I cut off was a backlog to manage their work.
Okay.
These leaders will actually, just like managers do today, they have a to-do list, but if you can get them together and actually to manage their work through, and it's probably going to be a little bit more of a Kanban type board, if that makes sense to the group, where they're really just sort of saying, this is what this is what we are going to do, this is what we're doing, and this is what we've done. But it really helps them visualize the, you know, the entire effort that's going on in their product area, in their group, we often call it.
oftentimes these are like dedicated rooms with more than one wall to visualize all that work over more than several quarters.
Yes. What I came to love was the facility departments that actually had the paint, where they could paint the walls into being whiteboards, because then not only could you use them as whiteboards, but you could just draw your boards and people would put their boards all over the place. It was great. There's a lot of pen and sticky fighting. All right. So what we want to do now is just take a few minutes to do a breakout session. And again, for everyone to sort of think through some of the ideas that I've shared here, but then also I hope share out some more ideas and what you, how you think you could solve some of these, a couple of these scenarios that I have. So it looks like there's just 7 of us left. So I'm just going to create 2 rooms. And what I'm going to do, just to make it easy on everyone, as soon as I put you guys into the rooms, so don't worry about writing. Well, you can always write down what I'm about to say, but don't worry about that. I'm going to actually, you know, share out the scenarios with you. And so I'm not even going to try, they're a couple sentences long each. So I really am not going to bother to read them because I don't think it's going to help at all. Just put them in the broadcast message. And I'll just say, I'll hang back in the main room. And if for some reason my great idea about this broadcast message doesn't work or make sense, you can just come back and tell me. And basically what it is I'm giving you a middle leader sort of situation.
Mattress pad that we just got from
and then just sort of asking you to brainstorm, hey, how could you help them, you know, get through this, I'll call it, just generally speaking, this roadblock they have, or this trouble they are having with shifting from a manager to a leader. So I'm going to go ahead.
Hey, Betsy, you could also paste the scenario in the chat, because it should
Okay.
stay even when people are in breakout rooms.
Okay, cool. So I'll do both then. Hopefully they'll both work. I think what happens sometimes is the Zoom version you have actually can affect that, which I know is really annoying, like affect what works for different people. I'm just checking my scenarios to make sure I got my good sentence structure. Okay. Yep, all right. So I'll put these in chat, and then I'm going to set a timer for 10 minutes, and then I'll bring you guys back and we can chat about what you came up with. And one thing I will ask you guys to do is to just while you're talking, if someone can just make some quick notes, just a couple bullets on what you're going to share. And when we come back, if you would put those couple of bullets into the chat window, then again, we'll preserve what you guys talked about. All right. I'm not getting an open room.
Probably another 30 minutes. I'm about to have.
Here we Welcome back. So I just learned something new, that broadcast messages have a text limit.
Maybe that's a hint that you need to be more concise.
Yeah. It's not easy. I'm used to saying 2 minutes to go. All right. So does someone from room 1 want to share with us what they came up with?
Sure, I can. I took some notes. So one of the things that we talked about was how much we love some of the collaborative tool. Oh, sorry, am I still here? Okay, good. Some of the collaborative tool features that we have in Zoom. Mural has a great confetti feature that gets people excited. I know there are Teams reactions that are pretty popular, but any way to kind of get to that personal connection with your colleagues, especially if you're new on a team, and then making sure to make time to actually get to know them on a personal level. So whether that be scheduling happy hours, so team happy hours, coffee, just to catch up and get to know people outside of the required virtual meetings.
Cool.
We also had another suggestion, which is to make calls fun or make meetings more fun to express your personalities. So Adam was talking about he has a bunch of fun hats he wears that are very popular on his client site.
That's great. Yeah, and would you guys say that you see this pretty often, that teams just completely get reformed and you've got a lot of people that haven't worked together before or like are virtual strangers to each other?
More than I'd like.
Yeah, that would be my answer. More than I
My
like.
current assignment seems to be like, hey, it's a new PI. Let's shake the box and see where things land.
We don't even make it a PI. We make it a sprint or two, and people start moving again. It's painful. It's so hard to watch.
Could you please take your nails off that chalkboard, Rachel?
And again, like going back to my experience when I did this, I got to like handpick all people I knew, and they'd all been with the company for years and nobody went anywhere. So I didn't even have this problem. And then when I started experiencing it as a coach, I was like, how do these people deal with this? Like it talk about everything new at once. It just seems like too much. All right. And how about room 2?
Sure. So our scenario was a middle leader with a technical background is successfully delivering, but struggling with leading the team and his stakeholders on the mindset change. So how can we help him with this issue? So we discussed, ensuring first that this particular person understands the change themselves and the reason behind it. Sheila had a good point saying, are they being too much of a purist and doing things a little bit too much by the book, like doing too much of a textbook change effort rather than understanding that their team is a team of people and humans with different emotions and different ways of comprehending things. That people and organizations are different. There is no cookie cutter way to approach it. And there also may be cultural differences as well. We also said that this person is probably having a hard time adopting the change themselves. So if you're having a hard time with it, it may be a little bit difficult to be a champion for others to adopt change if you are having a hard time with it yourself. So I would say that this could be a way to encourage the sponsor to revisit this with his or her middle leaders. And then talking about also what doesn't work, not just what does work. So, talking about some experiments that have been tried that have failed. Learning from failure is often more productive than learning from what did work. And then another point was that there may be a lack of training here. Folks can have their titles changed, but only get a few days of training. They may not understand what certain concepts are or who they can go to with questions, as well as middle leaders specifically in that particular role may have a hard time identifying that they need help, but they may even more so have a hard time admitting that they need help. So making sure that they know who they can go to with questions, as well as that it's okay for to not have all the answers. And then lastly, having something like a center of excellence or establishing a community of practice can help this particular role discuss with their peers and learn from others.
Great, that was awesome. Great. So the only thanks, you guys. I hope that was helpful for you guys, because I think what you came back with was some great sort of real ideas and what we really need to be doing in these situations. And I love the idea of who to go for help. And it kind of occurred to me, like, these people need mentors too, right? They are going to be mentors, but they need to be mentored. So that's probably something else we have to look to their either their change agents or their people for.
Right.
All right. So the last slide that I have is just simply around, I think we've talked about a lot of these things already. I know I mentioned one specific Harvard Business Review article that I read recently that I thought was really cool, because it got into some different types of tooling and I like the whole idea of steadying. So I'm sure there's a lot more articles and even books. I think someone mentioned some books in the chat that I will add. And I think I'll even go back and add in, even though Leoncione's book is a little dated now, just because of the sort of the time it was written literally and what was happening then during transformations. It's still just helping managers understand that they can adopt a coaching mentality. So I'll add that one in as well. And I have some more info on forming agile leadership teams that I can share. It's not exactly a full-blown handbook at this point. Love to think it will be someday, but just sort of the how to make that happen, and some great exercises, because it's a little bit different than forming just regular agile teams. And again, can't stress enough, I think everyone left now is Excellion. So y'all, and Sheila, so you all know how to reach me. If there's more items that you have specifically around this, I'd love for you guys to.
Okay, I'm back on.
Good. I'd love for you guys to share back with me, some more ideas, so that we can really build this out into a great list of references and resources, both for all of us that are doing this as practitioners, but then also things we can share with the people that we coach and help and all those things. So does anyone have any sort of general questions? I know at some point too, well, Miranda, I'll turn this back over to you for any bigger picture discussions or questions, but anything specific to what we talked about tonight? Anything else anybody wants to put out there?